I always say I'm a speaker by circumstance. Being a speaker is the last thing on this earth that I ever wanted to be. Before my near-death car crash, I feared public speaking, what I thought was worse than death, and then I got proved wrong. So I am partially disabled. I'm a part-time wheelchair user. I can take about 1,800 steps a day. Now today I was able to walk in. I walked very slow, and I've been here before, so I knew exactly how far I was going to have to walk. My story started 12 years ago on Route 66. I was coming home. I had just stopped working as a full-time portrait photographer, and I went back into the medical field as an x-ray and an MR tech. So I was coming home from my day job. I taught a Zumba class 1 to 2 times a week, and that's where I was going. And as a medical professional, I always knew there was a possibility that something like this could happen to me. But just like you, I never thought that it would. I am the one who took care of those patients. I was never the patient. And I have never had anything go wrong with me. So really, I had never been much of a patient before. And boy, have I gotten a lesson in role reversal. So my car crash, when I tell you it was horrific, it was 4 cars, pile up, fatal, drunk driver. That drunk driver was going in excess of 85 miles an hour whenever he hit us head on. And you would think that I was the first one in line, but I was actually the second one in line. Thankfully, there was a truck that was pulling a trailer, and that drunk driver had skidded down the side of him, and that slowed him to somewhere in excess of 85 miles an hour. So we had 2 points of impact. Initially, we hit head on my side of the vehicle, and because we hit at that awkward angle, it flipped him around to have a second impact into the side of my door. 2 of my daughters were with me. I had one in the passenger seat beside me and one directly behind me. I have never in my life been faced with making so many decisions in such a short amount of time. I had 3 very distinct thoughts that went through my head. The first was I had to accept that this was going to happen. My second is I'm an action person. I'm like, okay, this is going to happen. What can I possibly do to try to avoid or lessen this impact? And my third thought was, okay, this is going to be bad. So bad that I am probably going to lose my life. And in that moment, I accepted the fact that I will give up my life, but God, please, please, just save my girls and let them be okay. And that's exactly what happened. The entire impact was basically on my seat. I took the brunt of everything. My girls were able to heal in about 6 weeks. I spent the next 4 years having one reconstructive surgery after another. And my goal was, hey, I want to walk. I want to walk unassisted. So it took me 4 years to be able to do that, to a part-time status. At this point, it's been 12 years. Right now, I've had 13 reconstructive surgeries, 3 on my pelvis and 5 on each of my ankles. Now, all 3 of those joints are fused, so none of them move. So when you see me walk, that's 4 years of physical therapy right there, and I have to walk slow. A lot of people don't realize how, I guess, severe my injuries are until I get in a situation where basically their jaw drops. They're like, Carrie, I've never seen you like this. I just didn't know. I'm like, that's because most of the time I've got a handle on things. But every once in a while I get myself in a situation where I'm like, oh, snap. Like, I used to not take my wheelchair with me everywhere because, acceptance. I would take a walker that had a little fold-down seat on it that I could take everywhere. And if I got myself in a pickle, like the TJ Maxx checkout line at Christmas, I could unfold my seat and sit down right there in the line. But I am able to stand in one place without moving for 2 whole minutes. And the only reason I know that is because I had to have a physical therapy assessment recently for a new wheelchair. I am looking at some point, maybe ankle replacements. I'm just not sure they're gonna work for my injuries because it's not just my ankles, it's also my lower legs. But something new, I really keep up with Duke University because they are at the top of the line for my kind of problems. They can actually put in 3D printed bones now.
Oh.
And what happens is somehow your bone grows over top of that 3D printed bone, and that artificial bone is eventually going to disintegrate, and then it will be your own bone. But technology is not there yet, and they don't want me to be a guinea pig because my injuries are too significant. They want it to progress. So at the beginning of my recovery, Washington University said, Carrie, just wait 10 years, technology is advancing. We're at 12 years and they're not quite there yet for me. So what they say, God bless them, Carrie, another 10 years. And I'm like, I'm gonna be old enough, is it gonna be worth it by that time, you know? But going off of Renee's AI, I would not be where I'm at today unless there was some, all this technology, all this artificial stuff that helps me continue to be the person physically that I want to be. That transition, I've always been an entrepreneur. I had shared with the ladies, I used to be a full-time photographer in my county, so I always had this entrepreneurial side, and that came from my parents. My parents had day jobs, and then they had side jobs. They had that dream job that they're actually interested in. They just did this other one to pay the bills. So my passion was, I was ate up with photography, and I live in a small community. I was the only photographer in the entire county, so everyone knew me as the picture lady. Well, when that crash happened, and the 4 years of recovery, that obviously stopped. There was just no way that I could do that anymore. I do it a little bit on the side. When I am not out speaking, I am a cattle farmer, which makes 0 sense, right, with my physical condition. But having 4 years of physical therapy, I am great friends with my physical therapist, and he said, Carrie, stop coming in here all the time. He's like, you own a farm. Let's figure out a way that you can do chores that actually substitutes as your physical therapy. So that's what we did. I'm gonna go off, Renee too, I had the thought. My little dream thing is, if your ship doesn't come in, swim out to meet it. And I thought to myself, I'm like, I have never had a ship come to me, ever, before. And until this horrific thing happened to me. And even though being in front of people is the last thing that I ever wanted, all of a sudden I had all this purpose, all these lessons that I could share with someone else. And it landed right in my lap. Not in the best way you could think of, but in that hard way that you're never going to forget. So in a way that always keeps me humble. And so here comes my next business opportunity. I didn't want to do it, but I felt like the need was there, like so deep, that it just kept coming to me, and I kept pushing it off, and I was like, I don't want to do that. Why? And my relationship is with God. Like, I felt like God was saying, Carrie, this is what I want you to do for me. And I was like, no. You know that I'm not good with that. I'm introverted. I don't like being in front of people, and it just kept coming. And then he's like, you know what? She's not listening to me, so I'm going to get her community involved. So then my community came to me, and they're saying, Carrie, we've never seen anything like this before. Like, we have watched your progression from laying in a hospital bed in the middle of your living room for months to all of a sudden you're walking part-time, and this grit that you have and the humility that you're always showing, you need to share that with people. And I kept pushing it off, but they planted seeds. And then I had this feeling that that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And finally, one day, I was sitting in a room of about 400 people. I had just given my first presentation ever, and it was only 15 minutes, and I thought I was gonna die, because I was like, 15 minutes? And now I'm like, I need at least 45, minimum. And I was having this conversation, and I'm like, God, I need you to be like blunt, like blunt. What am I supposed to be doing for you? Just spit it out. I need you to like hit me in the face with it. And for the first time in 4 years, it's like he was standing right in front of me. And he said, I want you to do the one thing that you've been most afraid of your entire life. Speak up. Wow. And I smiled and I hung my head, and I kid you not, I go, you are so ornery. and my this went to, okay, that's what you want me to do. That's what I'll do. And the first year was terrible for me, and because it was emotional. I had spent 4 years recovering. I never got to move on from what happened to me. I was still like in that moment because I was still trying to get to that point where I wanted to just be able to live instead of constantly having these surgeries. So when I started talking about this, the raw emotion that was right here was just eating me up. And at the end of that first year, I was on stage and I was having a completely different conversation with myself than what I was giving to the audience. And I said, Carrie, if you cannot get control of yourself today, this is going to be your last presentation ever. And I said, make a choice. And in that moment, I said, you know what? These people in front of me, they're more important than my fear. Yes. And I made a decision. And something literally fell away from me that day and just hit the stage. And I was committed. And what I realized after that, when I finally started getting over my fear, was that every time I gave a presentation and helped someone else, something like a little bit of that hurt fell away and I healed. And then I got to the point where, you know what, I'm doing okay. Now everything I do is for you. I can concentrate on you. And that's where I'm finally at today. So I am a national speaker, I'm an author, and I'm soon to be coach. I have 3 courses coming up. Faith-based, personal healing, and then I'm working on a business one. And if I would just work on one at a time, I could actually finish one. So that's where I'm at today. My dream, I guess, for my personal self is that at some point I will make enough money that I can have somebody come along with me whenever I travel, because traveling is very hard in a wheelchair alone, but I do it. My dream for my business is that I can get out there and change as many perspectives as possible. Because anytime, any problem that you have, whether, I was telling the ladies back there, even if you have a business problem, a professional problem, my job is to get down to the root of that problem. I guarantee you the root of all of your problems always comes out to be personal. It's always a personal issue. So if you can open up, be vulnerable, and dive into your most inner self, that's where you're gonna heal. That's where you're gonna find your answers. But getting there sometimes is just a little bit scary. You know, you're like, ooh, that doesn't feel very good. I promise you, if you work through that, you're gonna come out the other side and you'll be so much better for it. So I always end every presentation with, every single day, life is gonna throw things at you that you cannot control. But we get to wake up and we get to choose how we're going to react to them. So I'm gonna leave you with the question, when that time comes for you, what choice will you make? And with that, I wanna thank you, ladies.
Yay.